Is it man bashing or are women just waking up to their value? I didn't say worth, I said value. Stay with me. What's up? This is Talks with Twilight, and today we are going to talk about man bashing. Now, let's first characterize what man bashing is so we're all on the same page. Man bashing is considered excessive negative generalizations about men. Excessive negative generalizations about men. Now, when we talk about these excessive negative generalizations about men, it can be said that it is happening on both sides. There's a bit of a gender war going on, so we all know that, right? But I want to say from the woman's side, even though there are a notable amount of women who practice misandry, which is the contempt and hatred of men, misandry is a byproduct of misogyny, which is the contempt and hatred of women, because we are all under the culture of patriarchy. The culture of patriarchy. We may not be practicing patriarchy in its traditional form, but its cultural context rests at the structural elements of what men and women come to learn from developmental stages until adulthood, even if there's some variations. But I want to give that context, right? But there is also a number of women that are just on a healing journey, okay? And what are we healing from? A myriad of things. Traumas, poor self-perception, low self-esteem, low self-worth. A lot of you guys got access to women because you were default males. Okay, I'm going to tell you, a default male is a man that gets access to women out of his league because she has low self-esteem. Because she does not know her value. Because somewhere along the line, she was taught that she is completely inadequate without a man. See, when I was a little girl, like many other girls, you were fed the Disney movie fantasy of a Prince Charming coming to get you and saving you from life, right? And that becomes a part of your mental landscape, whether you know it or not. Then for me personally, growing up as a black woman, I've seen women do some very obtuse things to get and keep a man. Now, other people in the black experience, especially those who have taken to the red pill conservative manosphere talking points, those types of men who big, huge podcast bros, but don't never do no damn research. Those type of men will simply say, oh, but, women, it's a matriarchy in the black community, and women have largely said, oh, they're independent. They don't need a man. Let me first say that being a functional adult does not mean that you cannot cooperate in a relationship. It simply means you're a functional adult, knowing how to balance a checkbook, okay? Knowing how to pay your own bills, getting up and going to your work every day or building a business. Learning how to be self-sufficient in times where no one is around is the same as learning how to wipe your ass. That's something you should know. And if you don't know those things, quite frankly, whatever suffering you acquire because of that is really to your own doing. But let me get back to the point. So women who screamed about not needing a man, independence, it had a lot to do with already having been abandoned by men and women being reactive because of that trauma. Now, many will cite incorrectly how men were told to leave the home. But more accurately, that welfare stipulation for men in the home was only for 12 states out of the 50 states of the United States. 12 states. All right. 12 states, literally like 22% approximately. That said, that was for stepfathers who were in the home. So the men had already abandoned their families. They'd already abandoned their families, the real biological fathers. It was the stepfathers that were in the home that welfare recipients could not allow in. More specifically, do your research. Do your research if you think that I'm wrong. So that whole kicking men out stuff was really not what happened. And a lot of people who talk about that weren't even born during that time. So that is completely irrelevant. The men were already gone. They had already abandoned ship. They had already deserted the women. And the women now had to be personally responsible. And they were just trying to put on a brave face. Independent woman stuff was just putting on a brave face because you were you'd already been rejected by your men. Your men had already deserted you. It was a coping mechanism. It was a trauma response. And just because it made certain men feel bad because it prolonged and lasted longer than they thought it should, it does not mean that it is irrelevant. Men's feelings do not trump women's feelings. We all have credence of our feelings and we're all entitled to them. Okay? I digress. So what has happened is women were still under the mentality that they were inadequate without a man. That is why women continue to bend over backwards to keep any quality of man. Low quality, high quality. There really was no real benchmarks, right? That's why you guys got the luxury of telling us to pick better. But no one ever took the time to tell us how to pick better. It starts with us. It starts with rebuilding on the inside our self-esteem. It starts with us stop waiting for some Prince Charming to come. It starts with us recognizing and accepting the rejection. And it starts with us loving ourselves in spite of said rejection. That is where picking better begins. Internal growth. And so now that we are achieving this internal growth, and many of us women are on the path of this internal growth, we're thrown into the same frying pan with any woman who dares disagree with the narrative that men would like to spin. Of them being authoritative, of them being entitled to a woman's submission, entitled to her body, entitled to her commitment, entitled to her trust, with or without proving himself. Simply because he is a man, that is something he's entitled to, which then makes us objects, which then in turn makes us property. You don't believe it, do you? Or you'll gaslight me there, right? It was too far of a leap. Not really. Women who operate the way men want them to are completely controlled by how much pleasure she can bring a man, whether it is through her domestic servitude or her body or her encouragement, commitment, nurturing. She's functioning in a role that feels comfortable to him. But if she wants to do something outside of that role, it's met with resistance. It's met with vitriol. It's met with contempt. It's met with many reactive hostility that it shouldn't be, because all you're wanting to do is be a functional damn adult. And this is a red flag to me. When I hear men talking about the 1930s and the 1950s, when those girls was 13, 14, 15 years old, coming out of the household, mostly coming out of poverty, going straight into marriage, being groomed and raised by their husbands, having 10, 15 kids, not knowing how to read, not being able to really drive a car, not having any mobility. All of that sounds very confining. It sounds very indentured servitude, and it sounds very toxic. This is why men didn't have to be concerned about their character. They didn't have to be concerned about their integrity, because these women had limitations whereby they were forced to know how to work with a man. Otherwise, they didn't eat. But you take in things like the workforce having changed from an industrial, impactful, heavy machinery type of workforce to a more hands-on, white-collar, administrative, and service-oriented society, you can see why women are actually in higher demand in these roles, because we have more of a service culture now, you see? And so as that shifted, more of the economic independence, I'll say independence for that, more of the economic independence shifted in favor of the women. And it wasn't to make men feel inadequate, although they did feel inadequate because of it. But it was because of the labor market in society changing. See, there is context to everything. And a lot of times people will cherry pick certain aspects of a conversation or a situation to affirm their personal bias. But if you look at the fact that we've moved into a service-oriented culture, it's no wonder women are in a higher demand. It's no wonder. So now that women can be functional adults, not independent, functional adults, the bar is higher for men. You just can't show up with something dangling in between your legs. You have to have something going on between your ears. And even more so for women who have done the work internally, you have to have integrity. Nobody is going to build you up anymore to be a functional adult who knows how to act like a civilized human being, who has respect for my body, who has respect and cares what I think, who makes me feel seen and heard. I'm not going to beg for that. And I'm not going to sacrifice feeling seen and heard for myself. See, what a lot of men bank on is women fearing being alone, women wanting to be married and being scared that no one will ever marry them. And so because of those reasons, they exploit women there. I'm not saying all men, but as women continue to evolve and heal and grow and develop, toxic men are going out of business. And because of that, you're seeing all this vitriol and contempt disguised as values and virtue signaling online. So you can't show up toxic and abusive anymore. Sorry, bub. Nobody wants you. Nobody wants you, right? And you're mad because I'm a functional adult, you're an underachiever. Come to terms with the fact that you're an underachiever. This is not 1930 where I'm 14 years old and I'm getting married out of the house. At 18, I went to college. So what? So what? I like having a degree. Most of us come from poverty and low socioeconomic backgrounds. What in the fuck else were we supposed to do besides go and get our degree? You're telling me, men are telling me the men that they were at 18 years old, you were ready for marriage, you were ready for a wife, you were ready to take that on? No, you weren't. You were playing in the streets, still picking your boogers, probably still eating them, playing video games, running around with the boys. You were a kid, okay? And you were doing shit that kids do. So while you were being a kid and you were maturing or doing whatever the hell you were doing, young black women were enrolling their asses in college and trying to get the fuck up out of poverty. And if you have a problem with that, you're an underachiever, and just accept and receive that. Accept and receive that you haven't really matured and you're in arrested development of toxic cycles of your own self-sabotage, right? Accept that you're sabotaging your own life and you hate yourself and you can't stand seeing women prosper beyond you. So you would rather beat them over the head with negative, toxic, unhelpful rhetoric that puts women in codependency instead of seeing you as a value. There is nothing wrong with loving and wanting a man, but I should not see you as someone to fill the holes inside of me. I should not see you as someone who I can't live without, or I feel completely inadequate or completely lost. I should see you as a value as you are, and as I am helping to expand you by contributing the best of me, you should be helping me expand by contributing the best of you. But since you're an underachiever, if you are that guy, if you're the underachiever, you're only concerned with conquest. You only want to win. You want to look powerful. You want to look strong, but you ain't got shit going for yourself. Not internally anyway. Don't get it twisted. Toxic men exist as high earners. Anytime a man only sees you as an object, you're fucked. Because assuredly, as you stop functioning the way he wants you to, you'll be replaced. Believe me. Not that I know personally, but men have tried to play with me like that before. And I've cut that shit off quickly. And so really, I think that this pushback for a number of women, not all, is because women now have the vocabulary and the clarity to see and know that this is an unhealthy man, and to describe and depict the characteristics of an unhealthy man clearly and succinctly. And that is threatening to toxic men who have been default men. Now you have to be better. Now you're mad. Sorry for you. And that will conclude Talks with Twilight, episode 1. Peace, y'all.